Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
David Armstrong of Rice Lake is a Republican candidate in the 75th Assembly District. The election is November 3rd. Mr. Armstrong, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you very much.
Well, you've been a professional you've been an executive with the Barron County Economic Development Corporation. Let me start out with this as the first question. How does Northwest Wisconsin recover from the pandemic, sir?
Oh, it's been interesting. When it first hit, over the last 6 months, we probably worked with 300 businesses, initially trying to work with them operationally to figure out ways to stay open or get open within the shutdown order. And then we did a lot of work back and forth between here and WEDC to get the essential tag, I guess, placed on some of them. It was tough. I mean, it has been tough. Like I said, we worked with over 300 businesses so far. A few of them are going to be they are for sale right now. And the owners have just said, I'm done. I've had enough. Thankfully, I don't think we've had any that have gone bankrupt yet. So early on, it was trying to get them set operationally to keep operating. When the PPP and idle hit, then it was basically full time, just helping them do the applications, getting the supporting letters to them that they're a viable business, and then just working through which would be a better fit, the PPP or the idle, et cetera. Going forward, it's tough. It really is tough on businesses right now. And it's a dichotomy to a great degree, because we've had some businesses that have flourished. The ones that were, quote, essential, they've done very well. The small businesses, a lot of problems there. Going forward, I think the key is just going to be, most of them are in pretty good shape right now that we've worked with. It's just keeping people going in, having them make sure that they're safe where people want to come in, doing the masking, doing the social distancing, et cetera. It's changed operations for businesses tremendously.
Well, there's a bill in the legislature that says if you're a charity or a business or an organization, and if you followed the COVID-19 protocols, you could not be sued over COVID-19. It sounds like you're saying you would vote for that, sir?
Oh, yeah, that I definitely would support. All the businesses that I'm worked with, I mean, they realized early on, if you're not safe, if you don't promote them, nobody's going to come in. So the businesses, I think, have done a great job of embracing that, because they want to make their customers safe and their employees.
We're seeing a record number of hospitalizations with COVID. If you're elected and voting on the next state budget, do hospitals deserve an even greater priority than they may have in the current budget?
Yeah, I'd like to see where they need help. So that's just it. Feds have done quite a job getting money, assistance into the hospitals. I haven't seen any bills. I haven't seen anything as far as what do they need in the way of money for what. So that's something I definitely look at it, but I'd like to see what they're looking at and kind of the language of the business or the bill.
Next Monday, a judge up in Northwest Wisconsin is going to hear a request for an injunction that would block the governor's statewide mask order. What's your position on the statewide mask order, Mr. Armstrong?
Again, I think it's a legal issue right now. I can't see the legislature, at least I don't think they've given any indication that they're going to do anything on it right now. I support the businesses setting up their own. Menards, for example, here, you don't go into Menards unless you have a mask on. Great. Then it's my decision whether I'm going to go in there or shop elsewhere. I tend to go in there. I've got masks. So I think let the legal deal with it. So I guess my position would be, if the businesses are mandating the masking, if I choose to go in there, I'm going to be masked.
Okay. Let's talk about the pandemic from a state budget standpoint. If the pandemic means, and I'll make up a number, we don't collect, say, $1 billion in tax collections, how would you make up that shortfall in tax collections? Would you cut spending, raise taxes or fees, or do something else?
I definitely want to look at that. What's been interesting is we from the county perspective here, each month we're getting our sales tax, numbers from the Department of Revenue. Early on, I thought we're going to get creamed this year. I initially thought we're going to look at 50% deductions in the sales tax revenue. Surprising thing is we're actually almost $200,000 this year above where we were last year.
Wow.
That's been the surprising piece. So I'm interested to see from the state standpoint, if this is holding through here, what's actually going to happen on the state, the money that's coming into the state at this point. From a perspective, to answer your question directly, I prefer to look at cuts rather than tax increases. People have been creamed by COVID. I can't see throwing another tax on top of them.
As states around Wisconsin legalize medical and recreational marijuana, what's your position?
I've got 33 years of sobriety. All right. I was a drug and alcohol user long time ago. My personal opinion is I don't think we need something else in Wisconsin to get high on at this point. So from a recreational standpoint use, not in favor of that whatsoever. Medicinal, I'll listen. I haven't been real involved in that issue per se, but it's something I'd listen to.
The governor's got a plan. He calls it the People's Maps Commission to draw the next set of congressional and legislative district lines. The commission would draw the lines, forward them to the legislature to be enacted into law. What's your reaction to the governor's proposal?
Well, I think it's a constitutional issue right now where the Constitution states it'll be the legislature that sets the maps. I tend to agree with the Constitution. I would like to see the maps, though, in relation to the Constitution, what's drawn. So I very well be open to looking at those maps, but I think ultimately the Constitution, unless you're going to change the Constitution, ultimately it says the Constitution that the legislature will set the maps.
The debate over policing reform is played out nationally, neighboring Minneapolis, the front door in Kenosha. There's lots of different plans. The governor's got bills. Senator Van Wanggaard has got bills. The speaker's going to form a task force. Here's my question. Is there any specific policing reform that you think should be enacted into law?
I'm the president or past president of Law Enforcement Foundation of Barron County. So I've been actively involved in police up here for 8-9 years. I've looked at the 9 bills that I guess were floated originally. I was somewhat mystified by them because they want to set police officer standards training. That already exists. I mean, it already exists right now that 720 hours of schooling are originally needed before you're a certified law enforcement officer. And if I remember correctly, it's 24 hours per year continuing education that they have to go through for a variety of things. I'd be open to a far-ranging discussion on this if we're going to look at it, but I'd like to almost start at the committee level so you can really dig down in this. I'd like to hear from the advocacy groups, Police Chiefs Association, Sheriff's Association, and have a great discussion on it. But I mean, some standards, police officer training standards do already exist.
The Democratic Party recently put out a press release saying that some of your past either social media or public comments have linked you to very far right groups. I want to give you a chance. I have not seen these statements or posts, but I do want to give you a chance to respond to the Democratic Party's criticism.
Yeah, basically there's 3 issues they were looking at. I had reposted some QAnon. There's a group, I don't even know what you would really call it out there, called QAnon. The followers, I guess they're called Anons. I came across it probably a year ago because I'm on YouTube constantly. I've got a wide variety of news sources that I listen to, both left, middle, and right. I came across Q, and like I told the initial reporter that called me, it's an interesting what if. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't necessarily believe that there's some organization out there helping President Trump, but some of it is interesting. So that's why I had reposted. I think it was 3 of them at that point. And it's an interesting what if. So do I consider myself a QAnon or an Anon? No. Am I willing to look at what they're saying? Like I said, interesting what if. The second one was a reporter had gone back apparently 5 years in my Twitter feed and found a video that I had shared on the history of slavery. All right. In there was, I think, 4 speakers. First speaker, everybody knows, that's Henry Louis Gates Jr. He does the PBS. I've watched a lot of his PBS ancestry shows. They're fascinating. So what it went through from that was there's, I think, 3 other gentlemen after that. I didn't have a clue who the 3 were. A black gentleman that was part of the conservative caucus in 2013, apparently in Washington. And then finally, the last speaker, David Duke. So didn't know that, posted. I wouldn't know David Duke if he, knocked on my door. So at this point, what I've been branded both, I guess, from, a state, you said the states come out with something. I haven't seen it yet, but.
The State Democratic Party, yes, sir.
Okay, but then the local Democrat Party has taken that to the utmost extreme. They ran an ad, a Facebook ad that showed me next to David Duke and his Klan garb, apparently. I mean, what that led to is 2 death threats so far. I'll burn down your house threat. Now back to law enforcement. I've talked to Rice Lake PD a number of times on this. And then apparently they've taken it upon themselves that I need to be eradicated. They've contacted my board, Economic Development Board. They want me fired. They've contacted the county. And it's gone so far from a political issue, or of them making it, now it's just personal destruction. So it's been disheartening, I guess, because I'm not a politician. This is my first time doing this, that something like that can be so misconstrued into I'm part of the KKK now. It's ludicrous.
Okay, just to clarify then, you don't consider yourself a follower of QAnon or a white supremacist?
No, I'm the farthest from it, actually, if you look at my background. And that's the point. I think it's kind of backfired to a certain degree on the local people, because I've been besieged with friends up here that are like, what are they saying? This isn't you.
Okay, I understand. Okay, let's move on. The issue of property taxes, which are high in Wisconsin, Mr. Armstrong.
Correct.
That's the reason that local governments and school districts have been living with caps and limits on property tax levies for more than 20 years.
Right.
If you're elected to the legislature, would you vote to continue those caps and limits on property taxes?
Now, that's one thing on my stint as city councilman here for the city of Rice Lake, dealt with those constantly. Because you have, like you said, you've got caps on what they can do from the property tax standard. And I've lived elsewhere. So when I moved here, I was amazed at how high, and I've been here since 2005. I was amazed at how high the property taxes are here compared to both Texas and Florida and Minnesota, where I've lived previously. So from my standpoint, I would rather not deal with an increase in property taxes. All right. Let's look at other ways. Cities, for example, shared revenue is another source for them. That's been leveled to slightly declining from the state. One question you had posed too, which I suppose we'll get to eventually, let's mix it in right now though, is the 0.5% sales tax increase. Right? For example, on that one, I've worked with City of Minneapolis, and the last 2 years going down to Madison, we've got a group called Heart of the North, which is a legislative day. We've worked the last 2 years working both the Assembly side and Senate side of, would you allow the City of Rice Lake to raise their taxes, their sales tax 0.5% to make up for some of the shortfall, but they'd even be willing to give back the shared revenue if you allow them to do that. Now, that rang a little bit with the legislators, because now you're looking at, well, let's take that $1.7 million that Rice Lake gets for shared revenue and split it out to the other communities. So would I like to see property tax increases? Absolutely not. Let's look for other ways that we can make this work.
Okay. The governor last year recommended raising our gas tax, which is now 30.9 cents per gallon. It hasn't been raised in 10 or 12 years. Would you consider a gas tax increase, Mr. Armstrong?
I've looked at that one too, since you sent that letter up, or the list of questions up. With The worry I would have in this district is we're rural. All right, we don't have public transit. We're spread out. The average commute here is in probably 30, 40 miles type of thing. If you're looking at an average commute, my worry would be is that's going to penalize rural more than it is urban from the standpoint of I'm putting 30,000 miles a year on my vehicle just doing my job, and I'm in a 30 by 30 square. Okay, as far as what the county is, what's that proportion of tax going to be here? What impact's going to have on them here versus elsewhere. But then also my worry would be with that is, will that only be used for taxes for roads? Or are you going to rate it? Is somebody going to rate it? That's a big concern at that point. So again, a discussion I'd like to have, but let's make it an all-encompassing discussion rather than knee-jerk at this point.
If a school district or a local government plans a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses?
I like the idea of buying local, but then I got the flip side is that's tax money, so we got to be considerate of it's property tax money and other tax money that's going in there. So I would like to see a situation where they're bidding, giving if they're scoring like most cities and school districts do, they're scoring the people that are applying or putting in the proposal. Give them an extra score for being a local compared to an outside, or make stipulations on there that if is it an outside that they got to use local contractors to get this done. So again, I think we can probably accommodate both. Using the outside, I think their idea is probably going to be, we're going to get a lower price. Not necessarily, but I think you can build some things in there where it's going to work either way.
And then finally, differences between you and your opponent on November 3.
I think my background here, I live, eat, and breathe the issues up here. That's kind of my full-time job. That's how I got into this originally. Was last year I was down in Madison once a week for 7 months working on housing legislation to help us build more housing up here, working on TID, changes to TID law again for housing up here, down there talking workforce, not necessarily just workforce housing, although a big need, low to moderate income housing. Also, when you look at training, push the youth apprenticeship program here big time, been down in Madison talking on that, and also the opportunity zones that was passed last year. So I understand the issues, I think, like nobody else can, but more importantly, I know the answers to them too, and that's what I've been working with. That's why Romaine approached me in the beginning. Romaine Quinn, our existing assembly, he called me one day out of the blue and said, how many times have you been down to Madison? How often have you been down to Madison the last 6 months? I said, weekly, either testifying, working on language for bills, et cetera. And I said, how would you like to make it permanent? So that's what started this whole journey, was the solutions for the problems we've got up here.
Okay, thank you. David Armstrong of Rice Lake is a Republican candidate in the 75th Assembly District. The election is November 3. Mr. Armstrong, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Yep, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.
You too.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.